Hello and good afternoon. I'm Mohanapriya. Welcome to Updates at Noon. Daily and Friday prayers during CMCO in Selangor, Putrajaya and Kuala Lumpur are permitted, albeit with a limited number of congregation, depending on consideration of the religious authority in their respective states. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department of Religious Affairs, Datuk Sri Dr. Zulkifli Muhammad Al-Bakri, said the decision was made in a National Security Council meeting. The decision has then been approved by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. His Majesty decreed that Friday prayers were allowed to a limit of 50 congregations, while daily prayers 20. However, these numbers must take into account the size of the mosque according to the 1 meter apart social distancing requirement. Furthermore, attendance is to be decided by the Mosque Qaryah Committee, be it through invitations or any other method the committee sees fit. Datuk Sri Dr. Zulkifli also added that the government is committed to allow the SOP abiding livening of mosques. The increase in COVID-19 cases in numerous areas in Selangor, Putrajaya and Kuala Lumpur is a determining factor of the implementation of the Conditional Movement Control Order. The proactive decision had enabled health practitioners to begin flattening the curve by conducting close contact screenings. According to the Health Ministry's Disease Control Department Director, Dr. Nur Hayati Rusli, this is vital in preventing the spread of COVID-19 uncontrollably to other states in Malaysia.
Jika dari segi peningkatan kes dan juga kluster, ia amat membimbangkanlah kepada kita semua, dan apabila kita lihat juga di sekitar Klang Valley ini atau Lembah Kelang di Selangor, Kuala Lumpur dan juga belasan Putrajaya, kita dapati bahawa terdapat pergerakan penduduk yang begitu aktif di sekitar tiga kawasan ini, yang mana-mana mereka bergerak daripada satu daerah ataupun daripada Selangor ke Putrajaya ke Kuala Lumpur, sama ada mereka bergerak ini sebab oleh bekerja ataupun mereka belajar, melancong di belah lain-lain.
The government has decided to put Labuan under Conditional Movement Control Order or CMCO, which will take effect from 17th to 30th October. Senior Minister for Security, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, said the decision was made during National Security Council special session chaired by Prime Minister based on the advice by the Health Ministry. Elaborating further on the matter, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said the decision was made due to concerns over the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the island. In an online media conference via the Defence Ministry Facebook, Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri said all economic activities are still allowed. However, the movement of in and out from the territory is not permissible, with the exception of emergency cases and for workers with employee passes.
Bagi pekerja, mereka bila bergerak di dalam satu daerah, maka tentu sajalah mereka tidak memerlukan pas ataupun surat daripada majikan kerana bekerja di dalam pulau itu saja. Pergerakan udara, lapangan terbang Labuan adalah dibuka seperti biasa. Bila mana pun jika ingin merentas ke negeri atas urusan perlu mendapatkan kebenaran daripada pihak PDRM.
Meanwhile, those who intend to enter locations placed under CMCO do not need to go to the police station to get the permission form. Instead, they can download the form through PDRM's Facebook page and go to the nearby police station for verification.
Selesai mengisi borang, hanya perlu ke balai polis yang berdekatan untuk mendapatkan tanda tangan ketua balai. Itu saja. Dan selepas ditandatangani, borang itu dicop, maka ianya boleh digunakan di setiap sekatan jalan raya.
409 COVID-19 cases made a recovery and were discharged yesterday, which was the highest number of recoveries in a single day since the beginning of the outbreak in the country. Meanwhile, 589 new infections were reported yesterday, a slight improvement from the previous days. Sabah remains the state with the highest number of cases, with 340 infections, followed by Selangor with 150 cases and Perak with 52. 3 fatalities were reported, bringing country's COVID-19 death toll up to 170 cases. All 3 deaths involved individuals aged between 54 and 100 in Sabah, 1 each in Tawau, Kota Kinabalu and Sandakan.
Kes kematian 168 iaitu kes 12,170 seorang perempuan warga negara berusia 54 tahun yang mempunyai latar belakang penyakit darah tinggi, kencing manis, penyakit jantung dan juga penyakit kelenjar tiroid. Beliau telah meninggal dunia di Hospital Queen Elizabeth. Kes 169 iaitu kes 15,303 ialah seorang lelaki bukan warga negara berusia 68 tahun mempunyai latar belakang penyakit kencing manis. Beliau meninggal di Hospital Tawau.
The third victim, meanwhile, was a 100-year-old foreign woman who died at the Duchess of Kent Hospital in Sandakan. There are 3 import cases, 2 from Indonesia and 1 from Ukraine, while the rest are all local transmissions. Meanwhile, 4 new clusters were detected, 1 each in Sabah, Negeri Sembilan, Putrajaya, Perak and Labuan, bringing a total of 75 active clusters in the country. A total of 5,945 cases are still being treated at healthcare facilities around the country, and 103 cases are being treated at intensive care units, with 31 requiring breathing assistance. 2 schools in Masjid Tanah Melaka, which are Sekolah Kebangsaan Teluk Berembang and Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Lubuk Cina, were ordered to close for 7 days after 2 students tested positive for COVID-19. According to Melaka State Exco, Datuk Rahmat Mariman, the students, who are brothers, and their 8 other family members were tested positive and have been admitted to Hospital Seremban.
Kes ni adalah kes termasuk dalam data Negeri Sembilan. Kes kejadian berlaku di sebuah kampung di Lubuk Cina, Negeri Sembilan. Lubuk Cina ada 2, ada Negeri Sembilan dan juga Melaka. Maknanya dia sepadan lah antara Negeri Melaka dan Negeri Sembilan. Jadi kes ni memang didapati positif kes COVID-19, ada 2 orang pelajar. Iaitu salah seorangnya bersekolah di Sekolah Kebangsaan Teluk Berembang Lubuk Cina dan abang dia di Sekolah Menengah Lubuk Cina. Dan ahli keluarga yang terlibat adalah 8 orang. 8 orang yang terlibat positif kes. So Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Melaka telah pun mengambil langkah-langkah membuat penutupan sekolah bermula daripada hari ini sehingga ke 21 April 10.
Early investigations revealed that the students contracted the virus from their aunt, who had just returned from Labuan. Close contact screening, especially involving school staff and students, is currently being conducted. A staff of Proton Shah Alam was confirmed to be COVID-19 positive after being screened at a government health centre. Meanwhile, close contact searching and screening activities are being conducted, and those involved have been ordered to self-quarantine at home. Proton, in a media statement, explained that sanitation and disinfection processes are already underway at the affected location. The company also confirmed that the infectivity rate of the case was very low. This is due to the said staff only working at the Research and Development Department without interaction with civilians. Next, U.S. Customs and Border Protection to consider revoking WRO on FGV. The United States Customs and Border Protection CBP will consider the petition for the revocation of the Withhold Release Order, or WRO, towards a palm oil and palm oil produce company FGV Holdings Berhad. Now, the company, in a statement, informed that the revocation will also take into consideration the information or audit report of a trustworthy, unbiased third-party audit firm. In addition, FGV has contacted a few free-based organizations to conduct audits on the company's operations. The audit firm is expected to be chosen within a few weeks prior to the audit process. The statement added that FGV remained committed in taking every necessary measure to lift the WRO. Previously, on 8th October, FGV had contacted the CBP through conference calls to inquire on steps to be taken for the revocation of the WRO. It pointed out that information around the CBP's investigation findings was imperative to enable FGV to address and resolve any remaining gaps in its practices. However, the CBP could not reveal any information about its findings, except that its research had identified the 11 International Labour Organization or ILO indicators of forced labor in FGV's practices. The curfew in the waters of 7 districts in the Eastern Sabah Security Zone or S Zone, scheduled to end tomorrow, has been extended until 1st November. Sabah Police Commissioner Datuk Hazani Ghazali in a statement said the curfew covers the waters of Tawau, Sempurna, Kuna, Lahad Datu, Kinabatangan, Sandakan and Beluran. Elaborating further, Datuk Hazani said those living in the area are prohibited from approaching or being in the waters of the 7 districts between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. He explained that the curfew has been extended to ensure the affected areas would not be encroached by terrorists, which could threaten the security, hence ensuring the safety and well-being of the people of Sabah. He said based on information gathered, militant groups involved in kidnapping for ransom and the Abu Sayyaf group are still trying to infiltrate these waters to carry out kidnapping and cross-border crime. Dato' Hazani added that the curfew order was also to ease enforcement and monitoring on the movements of boats and for the chalet operators and local fishermen to feel secure with the presence of security forces. He said that all district police chiefs in the affected areas have also been given authority to issue permits to those applying for fishing activities and to attend urgent matters during the curfew. The bodies of 3 victims believed to have drowned were found in 2 separate rivers in Kedah. The first victim was an elderly person reported to have fallen into the Sungai Langgar River. Kedah Fire and Rescue Department Deputy Director and Senior Enforcer Muhammadul Ehsan Muhammad Zain said the second victim, Ismail Awang, was found by civilians about 4.3 kilometers away from where he was reported to have slipped and fallen into the river. Search and rescue operations was conducted involving 28 personnel from the Alostar, Jalan Raja and Pokok Sena fire stations, as well as members of the police personnel. Meanwhile, in Kulim, the body of a man was found floating in Sungai Limau. The body, on which there was no identification document, was found stuck in between rubbish and debris in the river. The body was handed over to the police for further action. Protesters gathered in defiance of emergency law. That and more coming up in our foreign segment. Stay with us. Over 10,000 Thai protesters gathered on Thursday in defiance of a sweeping crackdown after authorities moved to crush months of pro-democracy demonstrations by imposing emergency powers and rounding up leading activists. Protesters have called for Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha to step down, while some prominent activists have demanded reforms to the kingdom's unassailable monarchy. The protest was made despite a new decree that bans gatherings of more than 4 people aimed at quelling student-led demonstrations. After the emergency measures were announced early Thursday, riot police dispersed hundreds of protesters who camped overnight outside the Prime Minister's office and arrested 22 activists. The emergency decree gives authorities powers to arrest protesters without warrants and also to seize electronic communications equipment, data and weapons suspected to be linked to the movement. Online messages that threaten national security are also banned. Refusing to back down, student leaders then took to social media to urge supporters to take to the streets. Among those who turned out were high school students who covered the ID tags on their uniforms with duct tape. Many held up 3-finger salute, which has been harnessed as a symbol of the burgeoning movement. The gatherings come the day after a tense anti-government rally saw thousands gather to call for reforms to the monarchy. In other development, Thailand and China have agreed to open a fast lane for personnel exchanges and a green channel for exchanges of goods between the two countries amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The two sides reached the agreement during a meeting between Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha and visiting Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. At the meeting, Prayut said Thailand is very grateful for China's support and assistance in its fight against COVID-19. He said Thailand was hoping to enhance cooperation on vaccine research with China and push forward the Thailand-China Comprehensive Strategic Cooperative Partnership for further development. The Prime Minister said Thailand firmly supports the One China principle and is willing to actively participate in the upcoming China International Import Expo, CIIE. For his part, Wang Yi pointed out that the mutually beneficial cooperation of China and Thailand has successfully withstood the COVID-19 epidemic and achieved growth against the trend, demonstrating the strength and bright prospects for bilateral cooperation. Wang Yi arrived in the Thai capital late on Wednesday, the last leg of his Southeast Asian tour, which also took him to Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore and Laos. European leaders have demanded Britain to urgently give ground on fair trade rules to unblock stalled post-Brexit negotiations, angering London and putting the fate of the talks in jeopardy. Now, the 27 bloc leaders arrived for a summit in Brussels, expressing cautious optimism, but in their written conclusions urged the EU and its member states to step up preparations for a chaotic no-deal exit. Their calls for urgency were balanced, however, by an invitation that Britain keep talking next week in London and Brussels the week after that. The invite comes after a warning by Prime Minister Boris Johnson that he could walk away from the negotiations unless the results of the summit pointed to a breakthrough. The EU never recognized his deadline and in their conclusions put the onus on Johnson to rescue a deal as time runs out. In an unusually testy tweet, the UK's chief Brexit negotiator, David Frost, said he was disappointed by the summit conclusions, underlining that they no longer committed to working intensively to reach a future partnership as had been earlier promised. Frost also scoffed at the EU's charge that only Britain should budge, calling it an unusual approach to conducting a negotiation. U.S. President Donald Trump holds a rally on the tarmac of Pitt Greenville Airport in the swing state of North Carolina. Now, the event is his 4th campaign rally in 4 days, despite a surge of COVID-19 cases in the United States. President Trump and challenger Joe Biden were holding competing televised town halls as a coronavirus case in the entourage of Kamala Harris forced Biden's vice presidential pick to suspend travel. Trump, well behind in the polls ahead of 3rd November, was set to try and drown out Biden by holding a rival town hall on NBC at exactly the same primetime slot as the Democratic candidate was already scheduled to appear on ABC. Originally, both candidates had been meant to meet for what could have been their second of 3 presidential debates. The first, which took place in Philadelphia, was a brutal affair in which Trump repeatedly talked over the top of Biden and the Democrat told him to shut up. The follow-up, however, was scrapped after organizers switched to a virtual format, citing Trump's coronavirus infection, and the president refused to accept the arrangement. Trump, who says he is clear of COVID-19 and got back on the campaign trail on Monday, has rallies booked around the country for every night this week. But with only 19 days until the election, he is running out of time to overtake Biden, who has run a much quieter campaign focused on America's unhappiness with Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis. Coming up in sports, Mikel Arteta seeks clarification on COVID-19 protocols. National athletes in areas placed under the Conditional Movement Control Order, or CMCO, are only allowed to train in a quarantine-based approach at designated training centres and without exposure to the outside community. Senior Minister for Security, Dato' Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, said that athletes who do not live in the training centres, like the national 10-pin bowling team who train at shopping centres, are not allowed to train for the duration of the CMCO.
Yang dibenarkan adalah latihan berpusat di pusat-pusat latihan. Latihan di pusat-pusat latihan. Dan latihan itu secara quarantine based approach. Mereka tak boleh keluar pun. Mereka berada di dalam pusat latihan tersebut dan tidak boleh keluar masuk. Dia macam di quarantine juga. Jadi yang ini dibenarkan. Tetapi kalau di Sunway Pyramid, sebuah shopping kompleks, jadi ianya bukanlah dianggap sebagai latihan berpusat secara kuarantin, kerana selepas latihan mereka akan balik dan melalui shopping kompleks dan sebagainya, dan ini tidak dibenarkan di dalam kawasan PKPB.
Previously, it was announced that centralized training for athletes, which was being implemented by the National Sports Council (NSC) and state sports councils, could be continued in a closed and controlled manner, as implemented at the NSC complex Bukit Jalil and Keramat, Academy Badminton Malaysia, Bukit Kiara, and the Paralympics Sports Excellence Centre, Kampung Pandan. Individual sports activities, non-contact sports, and outdoor sports not exceeding 10 people, such as walking, jogging, cycling and aerobics, are among those allowed to the public in the CMCO areas. Meanwhile, all swimming pool activities, physical contact sports, combat sports, indoor sports and the organisation of sports or championships are not allowed. Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta said that he would like COVID-19 protocols to be clearer for players who travel out on international duty. Now, while acknowledging that it is important to keep international fixtures on the calendar with big tournaments coming up, Arteta also insists on consistency with the rules and guidelines.
But the reality as well that there are always some risks, whether they are here or there to take it. Clarify certain rules, certain protocols, try to unify them to give ourselves the best possible chance to protect our players and protect the clubs as well.
Arteta may be without Kieran Tierney for the Gunners' trip to Manchester City on Saturday, as the defender is in 14 days quarantine in Scotland after coming into contact with a teammate who tested positive, despite testing negative himself. Arteta's main concern is Arsenal's clash at City, who have begun the season in stuttering fashion, taking 4 points from their first 3 games. Arsenal could hand a debut to new signing Thomas Partey after his arrival from Atletico Madrid. In recent developments, Arteta welcomed comments from former manager Arsene Wenger, who said this week that he'd like to return to cheer the team on. He said Wenger was a massive figure for him, adding that he would like for Wenger to be closer so that he can learn from the former manager. After scoring his first competitive league goal for Belgium club KV Kortrijk, Malaysia's young starlet Lukman Hakim Shamsuddin says he is getting more in tune with his fellow under-21 teammates. Now, the former Mokhtar Dahari Academy trainee also expresses his excitement after successfully opening a goal account in the match after previously scoring goals in friendly and warm-up matches.
Now, for the first 2020, for the first official game for me, 2020, the first official game for me, and first goal, I'm very happy. Of course, new teammates, new team, I'm very happy.
Also the winning goal?
Yeah, also the winning goal.
Lukman Hakim also shared the joy through his Twitter account while expressing gratitude towards his family and supporters for encouraging and praying for him. In a league match against KFCO Beerschot Wiltsch, the 18-year-old striker displayed his destructive instinct when he scored the winning goal through a header in the 83rd minute to help the team to a 1-0 victory. For the record, the 1-0 victory was the fourth victory scored by the B21 KV Kortrijk squad after going through 6 matches and saw the club now in 4th place with 14 points.
With the MERS 999 application system, getting emergency assistance is now easier. Save Me 999 Police connects the Malaysian public to the police. Save Me 999 Deaf for those with hearing or speech impairments. And Save Me 999 Blind for those with visual impairments. Download now for free on your smartphones. MERS 999 and applications make emergency calls easier.
And that concludes today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top story today, CMCO needed to reduce movements in the Klang Valley. Tune in to News at 10, coming up at 10 p.m. on Saluran Berita RTM on My Freeviews channel 123. You can also stream the news by surfing RTM's MyClick. I'm Mohana Priya. Have a great day.